begins in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you may be listening, whenever you may be listening. This is College Lacrosse Live. I'm sitting here with Zack Capozzi from Lax Reference. I'm Q. The stories wrote themselves this weekend. We had enough good games. I think this is going to be an easy show for you and me, Zach, but we are going to get through it. We had a lot of top matchups. We had a shake-up here, some like traditionally really large, big powerhouses essentially taking multiple L's here. So we're going to touch on that as we kind of make our way throughout the episode. But a lot of top matchups. Again, I think this episode is going to be fun. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, it was doing well. It was a fun weekend. That weekend where like teams are playing Friday, Sunday, and two big games, like that's always probably pretty wild. And you got like a Syracuse that just barely squeaked out of there without a second loss. It's a big weekend.
Yeah, we are. We unfortunately we weren't able to cover it on Saturday. So Dan Arestia is in Virginia. I believe Springfield, Virginia is where the championship series is being held right now for the PLL. He is on site covering that. I know we usually come to you guys on Saturdays and Mondays. We weren't able to get the weekend episode out, but we are going to do our best to cover, again, everything that kind of transpired. But yeah, it should be a fun one. Right up front, we've got some big matchups, but we talked about getting some D3 grit on the channel. So I want to show this off. This is some history, Zach. This is some major history.
Wow. There's maybe people watching who have never seen this before.
(9:30). We're watching the clock closely. Roth spins, shoots, scores high, bar down.
And that just might be the dagger. Matej Roth coming in, had 2 goals against Pfeiffer and gets one here. That could potentially seal the deal. Just spinning against his man. And
all right, some D3 grit for you guys here. Salisbury taking their first regular season loss since 2023. It's been 3 years since they lost in the regular season. Not many teams can say that. But falling to Lynchburg here this weekend. So just want to get that out of the way. Anything that you got to add to that one, Zach?
No, it's no time to panic, right? Like you look at their offensive and defensive numbers, like they're basically identical to the Gettysburg game. The big difference was Lynchburg won a lot more faceoffs, and Salisbury didn't have the possession advantage they had in that game. So maybe that's a weakness, but it's not like they had some drastic collapse. So shout out to Lynchburg. They pulled it off.
All right, I wanted to make sure I got this up front. Before we hop into the other games, I didn't know if I had any breaking news. No, we're good to go. Let's hit the top 20 media poll that just dropped. We're going to start with one of the biggest stories of the season, Maryland, obviously coming in. Zach, I was noted. You can go back and see my receipts on this show and say, hey, is this going to be one where Maryland just runs roughshod over a kind of wide open season? Everybody feeling like, hey, everybody's got a shot. Well, Maryland was teed up to kind of, play really well in that environment. And I guess not, because 1-3 to start the year. They just lost to Notre Dame this weekend.
I mean, that's the third time between these two teams that you've seen them kind of struggle to get the ball across midfield.
A shot and score quickly by Matt Jeffrey. And Notre Dame.
And I mean, this one wasn't close. We'll kind of go into the game recap here, but Notre Dame taking down Maryland 11-8. not a shocker for a lot of folks. I mean, the way that Maryland has been playing on the defensive side, although again, 11-8 is not a terrible performance. You can probably look more on the Maryland offense here as we kind of dive deep into it. But yeah, Notre Dame's got some athletes, man. They played extremely well. There's some issues here. And could they not make the tournament is my big question for Maryland at this point. I mean, when's the last time they haven't made the tournament? That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, so right now in the sims that I ran last night, like if they don't win the Big Ten title, there's a 47% chance that they make the field, right? So, it is a weird situation, right? I mean, it's obviously not like AQ or bust, but like if they don't win the AQ right now, I'd say there's a better chance of them not getting in. Now, there's a lot of time for that to change, and they've certainly played a tough schedule so far. So, I think it's too early to say they're in real trouble, but they're certainly not saying they're like, oh yeah, no big deal. Like they'll be in no matter what.
So Spanos actually, I don't believe, took the field. I think he was a scratch right before the game started. Obviously, he had no points. Leo Johnson led Maryland with 4 points here. Elijah Stovall following up with 2, and Chris Lyons with 2. Braden Erkes with 1. On the Notre Dame side, I mean, they lost the majority of the faceoffs here in this game as well. I mean, Maryland went 86% here. Maybe that goes down with the aggregate, but they probably went like 75% at the face and still just did not get the victory. Brock Bierman, Luke Miller, Matt Jeffrey, but Brock Bierman and Luke Miller having 11 points here on the day.
Again, Notre Dame, like if you put their like individual efficiency ratings, like for the players on that Madden rating, right, 0 to 100, I'm looking at right now. They've got, of the guys that are sort of in the top of that offense, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seven of their top 10 are like above the 80th percentile in individual efficiency. The only guy that's not, Fisher Finley, is not in that same bucket, and Miller is at the 74th. So like offensively, they just have. I mean, it's just been clinical for them.
It looks too easy. It looks too easy a lot of the times when you watch them and you watch the highlights. The highlights are really the only thing I get to watch from these guys. This one was behind a Big Ten Plus subscription. Obviously, we had the deal last weekend where they didn't get to play in front of anybody. But the highlights you see are just, I mean, they can create separation easier than anybody. So
I think the thing that stands out from that is like their shot on goal rate. I always think of that as like, is the offense kind of doing what it wants to do? Because if you have a high shot on goal rate, it's probably because you're getting the shots you want, right? If you're really struggling, your defense put a lot of pressure, it's harder to hit the cage. So like, against Maryland, they like an adjusted shot on goal rate of 82%, right? Like that just strikes me as like they were just able to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and conversely, I believe when I looked at this game, Maryland had a ton of shots. Of their ton of shots, not many hit the cage for the most part. So yeah
they were 40% on goal shooting, and I mean they took a ton of shots, right? They averaged over a shot of possession, so it's not like they were turning the ball over. It was just not able to put shots on cage, and I mean they shot 20%, which is 9 percentage points worse than their Syracuse game, which was their next worst. So, I mean, to the extent that that's Spanos not being there, maybe it's excusable a bit, but it certainly was their worst offensive day of the season.
All right, I'm going to try to pull up your strength of record piece here, sir. I want to make sure I get that for everybody. It's going to take a second to upload. We do have, again, a top 20 media poll. So Notre Dame coming in at number 1. Do they deserve to be at number 1? I think so. They're probably the most balanced team. I would love to get their specialist numbers, meaning the goalie and the face-off play for them. But when you talk about offense and defense, Notre Dame probably the most balanced team. Princeton making a run at this too with their performance over the weekend, beating some top-ranked teams. But I think they're worthy of being in that number 1 category.
Yeah, I mean, offense is number 1. Defense is still at 16th on an adjusted basis. So it's not like we're dominating all facets of the game for them right now. But at the same time, like they were really, really good against Maryland. So if that's that may just be like they don't need to put all the horses out for Bellarmine. And now we're seeing those stats catch up.
All right. Appreciate you guys joining us on College Lacrosse Live on this Monday morning. Those of you that tune in live, we see you getting in the chat. Try to bring some energy. We appreciate that as always. Those of you that get here afterwards, Thank you for tuning in. I've been sick as a dog, man, this weekend. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm like glistening right now. That's just the sweats. Like seriously, I'm struggling, but I'm trying to get you guys these episodes, and we will continue throughout. We've got Richmond on pace. Actually, before we get to Richmond, we've got the strength of record here. Notre Dame up in that top category, which I guess is more goes to show that they kind of deserve that number one ranking.
Yeah, I mean, strength of record is basically when you look at a team's wins and losses, how impressive are they, right? How bad are the losses, how good are the wins? And so, yeah, I mean, I think this is for them. It's less about the stats and more about. I mean, again, they have the number one offense, so it's not like they've been bad statistically, but yeah, I mean, it's especially helpful when you have a bunch of teams that are undefeated, or you've got a one loss against really good teams, and maybe a team like Ohio State that's played a little bit of a weaker schedule so far. But yeah, I mean, strength of record definitely likes Notre Dame as in that top spot.
All right, let's go to the number 2 team on this list, Richmond. They had a game here against the defending champions, right? Cornell here coming in. What is Cornell's record now? Is that that's probably their first loss? Yeah, they came in at 3-0 here. A lot of people said, hey, even though so we have some teams above them, they are the defending champs. They deserve to be in that top 3 category. And Richmond having probably their biggest win of the Chamati era when it comes to regular season. I mean, you're taking down a really strong Cornell team here.
Yeah.
Free shot for Creo. He scores! The double slid away from Gavin Creo, and Richmond takes its first lead since the beginning of the game.
All right, and Richmond winning 8-7 there. Zach, you got cut off by the media there. Not the first time, but yeah, what do you got?
I mean, I think this was a different category of game for them, right? Because they were heavily favored in their first 4, even against UVA. Their win probability was like 75%. Against in this one, the win probability model had them 20% to beat Cornell, and that's Lax is a slower moving thing, right? So it's still incorporating a lot from prior seasons, but like they had a plus 11 possession margin in this one, and so it was just a different type of victory than the ones we've seen from them in their first 4, but equally effective, and it looks like a W in the win column either way.
Yeah, I want to bring up these stats here. From what I recall watching the game, it was back and forth throughout, right? We did see both teams not really pull away from each other, but I think it was more on the specialists. When I look back at the game, I think Zack Capozzi from Cornell, obviously, one of the top faceoff guys in the land, he actually got beat here by Gaylord from Richmond. So let me pull these up. We've got Gaylord went 63%, Zack Capozzi went 44%, and then the goalie play as well. Good on both sides. Connor Knight 61%, Matthew Tully from Cornell went 67%. So the specialists coming through on both of these. What do you got, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like this was one where Cornell, dominated time of possession. They almost had the 60%, time of possession compared to 40 or 48 seconds for Richmond versus 58 seconds for Cornell. So it was definitely an interesting game, and there's lots of reasons. Like without that possession advantage, like Cornell doesn't lose this game, right? Or Richmond doesn't win the game. Cornell actually had the better per possession efficiency than Richmond did in this one. So to your point, it was that face-off advantage that made it possible for them to kind of overcome the efficiency advantage that Cornell had. So a bit of a mixed bag if you're Richmond, but again, you come away with the victory. That's really all you care about.
Yeah, Joe Sheridan leading all scores for Richmond with 4 points, 2 and 2 apiece. Lucas Littlejohn, 3 goals, 0 assists. On the Cornell side, the regular players are there, right? Goldstein here leading the way, 3 points, and then Firth with 3 as well, and Perfetto with 3 to lead Cornell. Yeah, man, a low scoring game here. I think it was this game at Cornell? I believe it was at Cornell. But Richmond again, 5-0, man. That's like one of the biggest stories of the season so far. A well put. I mean, they honestly have a little bit of argument to be the number 1 team in the country, but I think Notre Dame, you're not going to see any argument for me that Notre Dame could be 1-2. But yeah,
I mean, if you go back to that, just you don't have to go pull it up, but like from a strength of record perspective, like they are neck and neck, there's almost no daylight between those two. So you wouldn't get any argument from me if somebody had Richmond number 1.
I don't think that they're going to play that game, but the game that was canceled due to weather, the Maryland Richmond game. I mean, knowing what we know about Maryland right now, I don't even know where they rank on this list. But they're number 12. You're 1-3, and you're the 12th team in the nation. That is a lot of name brand reputation here from Maryland. But yeah, I wonder if they added that. Could they be 1-4 here to start the year? They don't play a lot of games either. I don't know if you saw their schedule, Zach, or you probably know this more than me, but I think they play like 11 games. 11.
Yeah,
so
well,
like already
they'll have the Big Ten as well. But yeah, I mean that's where like Duke's schedule, they always play a ton of teams and they always kind of build some margin. And then you've got like the Notre Dames and the Marylands of the world that really don't. The way I've always thought about that is in a normal year, it doesn't matter. But like, margin of error is pretty small if you're the Terps. And, maybe they're happy that they're not playing that Richmond game.
All right. Hey, are you Henry's dad? That's probably the most interesting name we've had here in the comment section. Interestingly, both Notre Dame and Princeton have sub 500 save percentages thus far, but stud goalies between Byrne, Fyock, McCool, and Manning Stevens. This is the year of the keepers. I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I think when you look at it, UNC to me, Zach, could be the best team in the nation. I think they should have won that Princeton game.
Yeah.
But the Princeton goalkeeper had 25 saves. Right. I mean, you think about a 2-goal game. I think it was a 2 or 1 goal game there with Princeton on Sunday, and the goalie had 25 saves. That's not happening again. So I think after looking at that game, I think UNC could be the best team in the country. Again, we're kind of like pulling hairs right here with like the top 4. But what do you got? What do you got here?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, like because it's whenever you're in a situation where you're saying, well, they would be the top team in the country except for this one weakness that they have, or in that situation where like they're a game away from being undefeated or whatever, except for this thing that they didn't do especially well. Like, I don't know, it's tough because like 25 saves, how much of that is down to hitting the goalie, in the chest and all that stuff. So, I don't know. It's certainly they've got the pedigree on offense. Like Carolina's number 7 on offense. From a save perspective, though, I think that's the thing that you wonder about with them. Like they're 50th, or was that from a save perspective? I mean, that's the thing, because like Marcus has been one of the places where you say, okay, is that a weakness for them? And they're 28th in save percentage so far. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, what ifs, All
right, we've got a couple more games to touch on here in the top 20. This is going to be Princeton had two great games this weekend, so I'm going to play both of these. Let's see what we've got first.
Princeton record for a goalie making his debut. Crunch time, what a save by Croddick. Took it right out of the stick of Thompson. I don't know if that was better than the one he.
All right, so speaking of, that was right on cue. Speaking of the year of the goalies and speaking of Croddick, a doorstep save there. Princeton also playing, so they beat Q's here. They beat Q's, I believe, 11-7.
Yep.
And then they went on to play UNC. So shout out to them for scheduling games. I didn't realize it was possible. We're going to be petty about this whole schedule thing for the rest of the year. But they played 2 days later. And shout out to both those teams for making it happen. Here, so we got some Sunday games, but we had a UNC Princeton matchup, was like one of the best games of the weekend. When you talk about two teams that were well coached, just great lacrosse up and down the field.
These know each other well. So Joe Bresci's known Peter Bonanno since he was born. Kaveri up top, stings it for point number 6, and the Tigers go back up by 2.
6. And this might be it. He won't care if it ends in an L, but if it ends in a W, what a day for number 2.
Princeton fans going crazy there. What do you got for this one, Zach?
Yeah, this was the defense for Princeton has, I think, been, and how much of that is Croddick, how much of it is other stuff. But they won that Maryland game with the offense. They were 42% adjusted again in that one. They were 7%. They had a 7% 7 possession disadvantage against the Terps. The last 2 against Syracuse, Carolina, like they flipped that, right? They had a positive possession margin. The offense was fine, but the defense against those 2 games was off the charts. I mean, to give 7 goals against Syracuse, 12% efficiency, North Carolina 16%, like that's just if that's the defense they're going to show up with and they're going to be at 34-35 on offense, like that's going to be a really tough team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll go back and say this, like just really polished, not a lot of mistakes from both of these teams, really buttoned up on both sides of the ball. We have, let me see if I can get this, the stats from this game. So Owen Duffy and Dom Petromala. I don't know which one I like watching more. Dom's got such a like sweet shooting stroke that I just love watching him play. But again, Owen Duffy, one of the best, players in the nation. I need to get, is it Jack Stahl? Yeah, Jack Stahl was on Owen Duffy, did a phenomenal job. So defender at Princeton, you're talking about a potential All-American there this year. I mean, he shut him down. 1 goal, 3 assists. Doesn't sound like he shut him down, but when you watch the game, I thought Stahl did a fantastic job. So 4 points for Duffy.
Well, 2 points. Also with Duffy, 3 turnovers, right? So that doesn't show up in that box score, but you got to take into account the bad plays as well. And I think that's part of that story that, if you're letting a guy, or if you're able to limit a guy like that to 4 points and you're able to force those 3 turnovers, that's big. Yeah.
Nate Kabiri and Colin Burns leading Princeton here with 6 and 5 points apiece. Palumbo with 2, Palumbo with 3 points, 1 goal, 2 assists. The goalie play obviously stands out. Craddock went 74%. Again, I don't think that happens again. I like the kid. I love the goalie talk on this one. Do I think if they played again that Craddock's going to have what was it? 74%? I just don't think it's going to happen. So again, I'm on the UNC train right here, man. They look good on both sides.
So here, I mean, the thing, they only put 60% of their shots on cage, right? Which again, that speaks as much that he has nothing to do with that, right? That speaks as much to what the Princeton defense was doing, and it probably suggests that the shots they were getting on cage were probably not great shots, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think if there was a situation where Princeton put 70% of their shots on cage, Carolina was at 60. If that gap was smaller, I'd be more inclined to agree with you.
Okay, we've got Harvard who kind of beat up on Marquette this weekend, so we're not going to touch much on them. It was a 19-10 victory. They play Michigan, who's been kind of struggling this season. We'll see what Michigan. I mean, that would be a huge kind of jolt for their season. They've had some losses here, so we'll see if Harvard can stay in contention there in the top 5. UNC, we already talked about here. They play Brown next, and then we move into out of the top 5. So we're going to briefly touch on the top 10 here. So Ohio State, Cornell, Duke, Army, and Cuse rounding out the top 10. Ohio State doing this without Van Buren. I know we come back to this discussion every week, Zach. I mean, that's a huge thing for them to lose their number 1 defenseman and play great defense. I mean, you're talking about holding Georgetown to 9. Yeah. Fantastic job. They're 6-0. Shout out to the Ohio State
number 3 defense in the country right now in terms of adjusted efficiency. So they've weathered the injury.
Nick Myers is doing a great job right now in Columbus. Whether they can turn this into postseason success is going to be the question. I know, again, I don't want to be the guy that brings it back to this whole, when can Ohio State get over this hump? Just being a large university and the success that they should, I guess, have at that level. They haven't been able to turn that into Final Four appearances and pieces like this. So I would actually love to see Ohio State get in there. They almost feel like a little bit of the America's team that maybe to start you thought about Penn State or Georgetown. It feels like Ohio State's that one where it's man, can they get over the hump this year? Anything for Ohio State? They take on Notre Dame. By the way, is the game next week, so we're gonna find out quick.
The thing that's we talked about earlier, you lose Van Buren, but their face-off unit seemed far improved compared to last year. The last 2 games, we have not necessarily seen that. They were even in terms of possessions against High Point and Georgetown. Now the flip side again is we were thinking maybe the defense would fall off a bit without Van Buren. So the thing we thought might need to be weathered by the faceoff advantage doesn't need to be weathered, and the faceoff advantage is kind of dissipated a little bit. So I think that's the thing that's going to be interesting, right? If they were able to be as good on offense, as good on defense, and have that possession advantage where they didn't have it last year, that's a much scarier team. Without that possession advantage, we're kind of back in the same situation as last year. So we'll see how they're able to do against Notre Dame and Denver and on that front.
Yeah, let me see what we have here on the stats from that game. I meant to pull that up. We had a comment from Ryan Archer, Richmond #1. Who's your #1, Zach? Is it Notre Dame? I know we've been having this discussion earlier. It's Notre Dame. Okay.
Yeah, that the strength of record is the reason, right? They've had the best wins and losses so far, and to me, that's what matters.
Okay. Let's see. I had one more here. Where are you?
Over. Chance here. It's a goal. And guess who? Garrett Haas with his third of the day. And that might be the game winner for the Buckeyes with 1:43 left to go.
All right. So Garrett Haas with 4 points. Looks like Marinier had 2. Sharp had 2. So pretty balanced here for Ohio State. Yeah. Connor with 4 points for Georgetown to lead the way. Rory doing what Rory does here.
Cullen Brown for the Buckeyes, 7 ground balls in that game. I don't know who Cullen Brown is or what position he plays, but he had a lot of ground balls.
Cullen Brown is the fill-in for Van Buren. So Cullen is the guy that's got his,
well, there you go.
Hit the Bills. There you go.
Yeah, he was the 3rd most productive Buckeye in the game, largely on the. I mean, he did score. He had a goal, and he had 7 ground balls, no turnovers. So. We talked about this, right? Like, if again, I'm sure there are some people that will say this is wrong, but like if your defense and it's all about communication and team play, you plug in a guy, if he's able to communicate, do you see that huge drop off? And if then they're getting goals from him too. It's like,
yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't want to go down to like a rabbit hole here, but like this season for myself, I coach at the high school level here in Virginia. And we lost one of our best defensemen. Like he's a player of the year guy. And like, so we're kind of having the same conversation of, can we do this from a team perspective though?
Right.
Like, can we be good or even better by transitioning to maybe less about, hey, let's have a super dominant guy that's an eraser and more 6 guys that can work together. I do think there is something to that, Zach. I think defense is a little bit more about how let me make sure I say this correctly. How good your least best guy is,
right,
as opposed to on offense, how strong is your best guy.
Right. The weak link. And I mean, if the link that replaced Van Buren is not weak, then who knows? But so that game against Notre Dame coming up, like #1 offense by adjusted efficiency versus the #3 defense by adjusted efficiency. Like I think we're gonna and 2 teams that have not played the strongest schedules necessarily yet. So yeah, I think we're gonna learn a lot from that one.
Big Tasty. I'm expecting the game from Big Tasty. He's got to get together for Ohio State and be the backbone there. All right, we've got Cornell, Duke, Army, and Syracuse here. Army had kind of a light week, taking down Holy Cross and Mercer earlier in the week. They played the weekend game against Holy Cross. They got Lafayette coming up. So I don't want to call Lafayette a pushover by any means, but kind of a light here portion of the Army schedule, which makes sense. Like this is how that schedule is kind of built for them. They're going to try to win the Patriot League. Like that's their way in.
Was their face-off guy out in those games? He must have been. They won 70% of their face-offs against UMass to start the year. They won 27% against Holy Cross. Their face-off guy must have been out. If not, that's a red flag.
Yeah, let me go back and check. I might be able to get that by the end of the episode. Cornell here sitting at 3-1, only moving down 2 spots after falling to Richmond. Their next game is at Penn State, and then Duke is sitting at 5-0, taking down a good St. Joe's team. Like St. Joe's has had some really good here victories. I think this one might be flying under the radar. Duke to me feels like they are flying under the radar when it comes to like a good program. Usually Duke is like, I don't know how much this is still the case, but you always feel like Duke is like the one that's due for an early season loss because they don't really care about how do you even say it? Like they're just about kind of development and by the end of the year they'll be solid. I don't even know how much that rings true anymore. But Duke has not had a blemish on this record. It's their 5-0. Some of those have been easy games, but we did see a 12-6 victory. That's a pretty dominant win over a solid St. Joe's team.
Yeah, I mean they're one of the few that's got a top 10 offense, defense, and face-off unit in terms of the adjusted numbers. So it's definitely a little bit under the radar. But I think that's when you start to say, okay, well, is it the schedule? I mean, even when you adjust for that, they're still top 10 across the board in all three of those categories. So yeah, it's hard to say until they play those big games, but I think you don't discount the other ones.
All right. Oh, what a week can make with the Syracuse Orange here. I mean, a week or two ago, we were sitting here flying high after that Maryland win, which doesn't even look that great now. I mean, yeah, like I'm not trying to ruin your guys' parade, but that was like pegged as number 1 and number 2 matchup here. And now Maryland's sitting at 1 and 3. But let's see a Q's victory. This was Michael Leo's overtime winner, I believe, against Penn. All right, Michael Leo looking kind of stocky there, and also taking the long way around. Nice catch off that kind of exchange from X, kind of getting under that short stick there and finishing. Obviously, Michael Leo, one of the better players here in the country and doing it for Syracuse. They're getting that OT win 9-8 over Penn, but did lose to Princeton here. So they're sitting at 4-2. They're one of the more interesting teams. Tell me a little bit about Syracuse, because I've got some haters on Syracuse right now on the strength of like their remaining schedule is tough. I'll go through it here in just a second, but I wonder how many of those games do they need to win to get an at-large and not, again, they don't have the ACC automatic qualifier, so I wonder what they need to get an at-large.
Oh, good question. Let's see. Let me pull it up because I got the projections here,
and I'm going to try to find the Syracuse schedule while Zach is doing that. So let me pull that up. Yeah, I've got it here. So I've got Syracuse is playing. Oh, come on. Don't do it to me. All right, here we go. Boston, they get the win. St. Joe's, dominant. Maryland, the number 1, number 2 matchup. Of course, that was huge. That was a huge win for them at the time. Not as nice now. Lost to Harvard. Lost to Princeton, beats Penn. Okay, so they've got a game against Hopkins, but then they play Georgetown, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, and Notre Dame. That is a roughshod schedule there that they're going to have to pull out some victories. I don't know how many is kind of my question of the schedule that you see here. Do they need to only lose 2? Do they need to only lose 3? Can they get in with 4? Probably not 4 losses. They already have 2 losses. So I don't see a 6-loss Syracuse team getting into the tournament. But I'll let the resident expert Zach take over here.
Yeah. So this is I don't know if you have this up or not.
Got it.
But so if just in terms of regular season, so we'll put that kind of in context, right? So like if they finish at 8-5, I think they played 13 games total. So if they finish 8-5. So they'd 3 losses. Like coin flip to make the NCAA tournament. So if you kind of expand that into so I think 8-5 is like that's probably where they need to be to feel like if we win a conference tournament game, we'll probably be okay. At 6 losses, like there's 0 simulations where they got in with 6 regular season losses.
So here's the thing. When I look at this schedule for them, like a Hopkins loss can't happen unless they pull off like a pretty strong victory against I don't see them beating UNC. Maybe they can. They're a top team. But when you kind of look at their upcoming schedule and you say they can't lose 4 times is what you told me?
What they've got. Right. Yeah, that's right.
So that's a large rope there.
Yeah. I mean, so like, look, if we're saying they got to get to 8 wins, right? Then they've got to get 4 more. You look at Virginia and Colgate probably look pretty good for 2.
Okay.
Um,
Hold on. So you're telling me if they beat Hopkins, Air Force, Denver, Virginia, Colgate, but lose to Georgetown, Duke, North Carolina, Notre Dame, that they would get in?
Wait, so they've got 15, right? No, okay, yeah. So they've got 15 regular season games. Is I think what I'm seeing, right? So that means that if they get to 8-7, so I guess that now we're saying they can lose 5. They got to win 4. They got to go 4-5 the rest of the way. So 4 wins. I mean, that seems doable, right? Now I guess the question is like if the wins are Air Force, Virginia, Colgate, and
I guess that makes sense. Like they can't. I think if they lose to Hopkins, it's going to be a tough road to get into the tournament. I know that's kind of crazy, but when you look at this, like, I think they lose to a lot of these teams.
I don't know. I mean, well, okay. Remember, right? The ACC has been dominant in out of conference. So when they play those ACC games, that's really going to have a big boost to their, to their RPI and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I think like 7 losses, like if they end up with 7 and 8, they're out, right? For sure. But if they can just get to be above 500 with the schedule that they've played and the fact that they've got, I mean, again, remember, they've played 3 Ivy League teams, and the Ivy League is the other conference that's dominating in the non-conference play. So those games are all going to have a big boost on Syracuse's RPI. So, I mean, I don't know. I think if they get to 8, right, win 4 of these games, I think they're probably going to be in pretty good shape, for an at-large. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean the narrative that you'll see play out as the season progresses as well is can they win in outside of the dome, right?
Yeah.
You have this whole idea that they win outside, against Harvard, they went outside against Princeton, didn't look great. They won against Penn, they needed OT to do so. It'll be interesting to watch, but they do play Duke at home, Georgetown at home, Virginia at home. I think when I look at the Virginia game, like it's starting to become a thing, just like Maryland, where you're like, that says Virginia, but that isn't the Virginia teams that we're used to. And you could make the same comparison to Maryland. It says Maryland, but maybe not this year with the way that their offense and how inefficient they've been.
If I were a Maryland fan, I would not be thrilled to be put in the same category as what we've seen from Virginia so far.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, you guys can take me out for that one. All right, I do want to show off like the difference though in Syracuse's schedule, which plays a ton of games, and then I want to show you guys Maryland's schedule, which I mean they're already 1-3, and to your point, they play those Big Ten games, right? But look at how small Maryland's schedule is. I mean they are. I don't know if that Richmond game gets played. Right. My guess would be no. They're already 1 game away from being halfway through their regular season schedule.
Right.
And they're 1-3.
Right.
So where do you go with like the route for Maryland to get in? So let me ask you this question before we move to the bracketology, and I'm sure you'll get to it there. But Maryland, what's their route, Zach? Like where do you see them playing in?
I mean, so if they get to, including conference tournament, if they get to 8, they're virtual lock, right? Barring bid thief, total chaos.
If they get to what?
You'd feel really good if they get to 8 wins.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
7, they're in a toss-up category, right?
Eight wins would be them running the table the rest of the way. I just want to be clear. They're 1-3 right now, so they have 7 games.
That would include the conference tournament. Right?
Oh, okay.
So if they don't win any conference games, then yes, if you'd say they got to win the rest of them to have a pretty good shot. Or again, if they don't lose a conference, if they lose their first conference tournament game and lose 1 more regular season, then you'd be sitting there saying, yeah, that's probably a toss up. They're going to be a bubble team.
Okay.
And again, I mean, this is a year where we are probably more likely than normal to have bid thief scenarios because a Richmond that loses their AQ is still probably going to get in, which is not going to be the case in prior seasons. So the Big Ten is definitely, I mean, there's a scenario where the Big Ten gets 2 teams in, and I think that's, if Maryland loses another regular season game, or maybe 2, like they could easily be out.
All right, Black Doom is saying definitely agree. UVA isn't the same as at all. Daniel is saying Syracuse is back on its heels, but I think they will still come out with 10 wins. I would split the 4 big games. Yeah, I mean, I can try to pull that back up here in a second, and we can revisit Q's. But I mean, they just play a tough schedule, so I'll give it to them. Like that, it takes balls to do that. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't want to hurt them for just playing these tough teams, but they're going to be an interesting one to watch.
I mean, I think the thing with them is like if you just play the way you're supposed to play, like they're a 90% win probability against Air Force, 78% against Virginia, 86% against Colgate, right? So they should have 3 victories right there, and then they've got a bunch of games where they're a little bit of a favorite, right? Hopkins, Denver, Georgetown, they're all in that 60% range. I mean, they would have to really disappoint and kind of fall off at the end to miss out. The strength of schedule is too strong. And the fact that they've got all those Ivy League teams, as from what we've seen from them so far, I wouldn't feel worried about Syracuse getting in.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We've already brushed up against this topic, so we're just going to dive right in. Zach does a great job of doing bracketology here on the episodes. And again, we can dive in. We've got some nice graphics for you guys on who's in, who's out, what we can kind of expect as we get to kind of postseason time. Again, appreciate you guys showing it up. And those of you that are commenting, keep it coming. We'll continue to ask those topics and talk about some of your questions as well. So, all right, Zach, what do we got, sir? Let's go. Let's jump into bracketology. I'll find some nice little graphic that we can just boom, like Lax Reference bracketology or something. You'll just have to imagine it. But let's get into it.
Or let's see. Do you want me to pull up the? I got my bracketology graphic.
Yeah, whichever one you got.
Here we go. There we go. All right.
Rock and roll.
So right now we've got this is actually a kind of a bounce back weekend for the Big Ten, right? They had the Ohio State win, they had the Hopkins win, Maryland lost, but they actually kind of bounced back a little bit. It was not a great weekend for the ACC with Carolina losing. Fundamentally, nothing really big changed. I think you probably had UNC move a little bit closer into that work to do category, but they're still looking pretty good. Penn kind of with a little bit of a resurgence and staying in there, but I mean, right now it's still. I think the Ivies is sort of like overshadowed a little bit how dominant the ACC is, and the idea that like we're pretty close to the point where we can say the ACC is probably going to have 4 teams in. The Ivies are sitting there where we're because of how well they've done in the non-conference. I think we're probably pretty good chance of them getting 3. Big Ten is still, you'd assume 3, but probably not. I mean, 4 is a little bit of a stretch for them. And then I think again that interesting thing. We've got Richmond, we've got Army that both look like they could weather a non-conf or a tournament loss. Right, Army if they lose in the Patriot League, right now they're at 71 to get in.
Not again.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Zach. Don't get me started on an Army loss in the Patriots.
I'm just saying, usually like in the past, like if they lost that game, obviously we see they've been out. Right now, if things kind of continue on as they have been, like Richmond's at 86%, right? So that's that scenario where St. Joe's wins the A10 and BU wins the Patriot League. Like that's 2 spots from the Big Ten and the Ivy League that would be in jeopardy. So. I do feel like a little bit of a broken record with Richmond and Army. Like, oh yeah, could they survive an AQ loss? And like, they're much better positioned this year, I think, than they were last year.
Yeah, I'm just glad we're at a point in the season where we won't get the comments of like we're doing bracketology already. Like we're getting to that point where a lot of this stuff makes sense and it kind of shows itself onto the field and all that stuff. So it's nice. All right, we got the bubble here. The bubble, I wouldn't say burst for a lot of people this weekend, but there was
too early to burst.
Too early to burst, but there's a little pressure being pushed on the bubble here.
I think what we're seeing, right? We've been talking about how well the Ivies and the ACCs have done so far this year. I think you're seeing it in the fact that like 4 of the Big Ten, 5 of the contenders in the Big Ten are 5 of the 10 teams that are most likely to be in that bubble conversation. And the fact that Richmond's done so well and St. Joe's has played a tough schedule, like they're still in the mix, and it's just it feels like it's going to be that question of like I guess the question becomes: is it two Big Ten teams that are the last decision that has to be made, or is it going to be Big Ten against that last ACC or that last Ivy team? And you see Carolina and Harvard up there as the two kind of candidates from those leagues to be in the mix for first in, last out. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it seems like the bubble is going to be very Big Ten flavored this year.
I love that we're doing this early. Obviously, we didn't host College Lacrosse Live last year, but I do feel like we're like getting in front of the drama almost, where we can kind of see, okay, maybe a month or two from now, we can kind of predict a lot of the things that could potentially happen here. Syracuse being the one that we touched on a little bit earlier, where depending on how it plays out, I mean, they could be right there if they don't win, if they don't split some of those top games. Maybe if they slip up against a Virginia or something like that, or anything. We got the bubble.
You really want Syracuse to be in jeopardy. I get it. I don't see it though. I don't see it.
It's tough for me because I just look at their schedule. I'm like, are they going to pull out against that schedule? Are they going to pull out 5-6 victories? They could obviously do it. So maybe I shouldn't harp on it. As far as the bubble here, any big movers here that you can recall from like last week to this week?
Yeah, I mean, Maryland showing up on here was the surprise. I mean, that's the first time that they've been on this graphic so far this season. And I think, it's like we were talking about. I mean, they don't have a huge margin for error. And if they have another regular season loss, then they've got to win a Big Ten tournament game. And so, it's that's the one that kind of stands out because that's the first time I've seen them on here this year.
Yeah. Going back to your bracketology piece, one of the games we did not mention that was interesting to me to watch, just because I love Coach Amplo and I love what Jack Rowlett and Poli are doing at Boston. But that was a big game for the weekend. Navy ranked number 20th, coming in, and Boston taking that game. It was close throughout, and then Boston pulled away in the fourth quarter, 15-10, I should say. Yeah, that's a tough one. Is there a route for Navy in this? I know you have Boston up here. They would need to win the automatic qualifier, correct? Boston.
Yeah, Navy is not even a tiny little chance. I mean, they're AQ or bust.
AQ or bust.
Out of the Patriot League, BU, if they don't win the AQ, they still have like a 9% chance. So that would basically mean they win the rest of their games and probably lose to Army in the title game. They'd have a shot, but they're the only Patriot League team that can. Or I shouldn't say that. Loyola is still hanging around
here. Oh, don't get me started. We're going to talk Loyola here on the show. I did not have anything prepped for them. They've got a 1.6% chance of making the NCAA tournament if they don't win the Patriot League. So you can just make an editorial decision that 1.6% does not qualify you to. You're saying there's a chance. We got a comment here from Black Doom saying, who's y'all's dark horse leading into this weekend? I would love to define what what's the definition of a dark horse here? I know that's like a Lax Reference question here. Zach always kind of wants to define what we're talking about. What is the definition of a dark horse here? Before I answer that, maybe Ohio State for me. Is that a dark horse? Feels like that could be a dark horse for getting to championship weekend. But
I mean, at this point, would you say like Maryland is probably a dark horse for getting to championship weekend?
All right. That's an easy route. Just going with the blue blood dark horse. Okay.
Well, just in terms of like right now, how many people would say, yes, I think Maryland will be there?
Okay. I hope we can define that at some point, because I would love to talk about a dark horse potentially. Let me look at the top 20 and see what answer I can give you.
Here's a dark horse for you. I'll give you a dark horse.
Okay.
Rutgers.
Okay. That's a dark horse for sure.
Potentially a dark horse. I have not heard anyone say one thing about Rutgers so far this year. They're 5-1. Their only loss is a 2-goal loss to Army. Let's see. What do their numbers look like? They've got the 7th best adjusted offense, the 10th best adjusted defense, 38th on faceoffs. But like, that's a team that, like, just from a projections perspective, because of what they've done so far, they do. I mean, there's a 3% chance they end up with the number 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. If they can get to 11 victories, including conference tournament, then there's a pretty good shot that they're going to get in. So, we'll call that a dark horse NCAA tournament participant, maybe.
Okay, we got a dark horse candidate for. I don't know if Towson plays Virginia this week, but we've got a dark horse candidate here. Henry L saying not really a dark horse, but it would be fun to watch Towson beat Virginia. I mean, that's probably like if you're looking at the numbers there, there's probably a better chance that Towson beats Virginia. No, I mean I know Virginia's still ranked, but do you have any confidence that they can pull off a win against Towson? I don't know with that defense and that goalie.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I mean Towson's got Loyola first, so they play Loyola tomorrow.
You're really pushing this Loyola piece, Zach.
They just keep popping up. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Certainly, like right now, like that's like a 1 in 3 chance of them beating Virginia. So it's certainly not like, wow, that would be a crazy upset. I mean, that 1 in 3 chances happen all the time. But it's so yeah, I'd say it's possible.
All right, we've got. I want to show this because we were just talking about Boston's chances of kind of running the table. I mean, when you talk about these Patriot League teams, that's the thing though. Like they play hopefully some good out of conference up front because it kind of falls off right as you go. Like obviously the Army game is looming. That's going to be a huge game for both of those teams. That is not this week, but next week. But then they've got Colgate. Is this Boston's? Oh, they actually do have a tough schedule. I'm sorry. Army in Harvard, obviously. Then they go Bucknell, Lafayette, Holy Cross, and Zach's favorite team, Loyola, as well. But I mean, that's you'll know here. Like if they can run the table, obviously Boston could potentially that would get an at-large bid. No, if you beat Army and Harvard.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point, like, well, if they were to lose their first Patriot League game, that might be tricky.
Gotcha.
But I mean, because at that point they'd have 3 losses. I don't know. That might be a little tricky. But I think they win out all the way to the Patriot League, then there's a pretty good likelihood that they'd be an at-large team.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess when you talk about dark horses too, and I look at your Lax Elo bracketology here, it's like the ones with the work to do.
Yeah.
Right. At this point, other than maybe Georgetown in here, Georgetown's probably, although after their loss, maybe they get down a peg. But you look at within that group, who's most likely to make the Final Four, and you could kind of get your dark horse.
Oh, I like that.
You can kind of get your dark horse there, but out of that group,
I mean, the way that's a tough one. I mean, what's Denver? Where's Denver right now?
My mind goes to the Big Ten. I don't know. I don't know. Maryland or Penn State is probably where I would go with that.
Let's see. Denver, third adjusted up. Third and adjusted. No, wait. No, 26. Yeah, I mean, we don't. It seems like defense. Those really strong defenses necessarily aren't. Like I looked at Denver, and they still are the number 1 adjusted defense in the country. And so, but the offense is probably not complementary enough to get them there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to. It's just you watch Maryland. It's just hard to look at them as a dark horse, as a potential Final Four team. The way they've played the last 3 games, but
if anybody could do it,
it almost feels like
what
an undervalued choice right now. Like probably
buy low. Yeah, no, I like it. Buy low on Maryland right now. I'm with you. You could definitely craft the narrative of like this is the low point of the season, and they could kind of maybe turn it around. So I get that sentiment is low on them, but yeah, I think you're spot on with that. Like of those teams, Maryland makes the most sense. We got Towson, Loyola, Virginia's taking on High Point. High Point's been struggling this year though, but these are the weekday games. We got Tuesday games here. Maryland's taking on Delaware. Nothing really. Georgetown, Richmond's on Thursday or Saturday. No, that's Saturday. Sorry.
Yeah.
So some Saturday games upcoming. I don't know if we want to necessarily jump into the Saturday slate of games yet, but anything we haven't touched on with the bracketology or the just any of these rankings as we kind of move into week 6.
I mean, I think the big thing to keep in mind is we've played, I think, 68% of the non-conference games so far, and we've got a bunch coming up this weekend too. And so by next week, a lot of the RPI stuff's going to be baked in, and so we're going to have a much better sense of like what happens if Syracuse ends up with 8 victories, right? Because we'll know how much that the ACC RPI boost is really going to be baked in by that point. So yeah, it's a big weekend.
Okay. I've got one more name here as I was going through some of just looking at the conferences, looking at some of these teams. Zach, I've got Sacred Heart here. One of the last few unbeaten teams here. They are 5-0.
Number 10. Number 10 strength of record.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so like right now, you're telling me that they've got the number 10, that they played the number 10 strength of schedule. And yet when I look at their schedule upcoming.
No. Sorry. Not number 10 strength of schedule. When you look at how good the teams they've beat are, their resume is the 10th best in the country.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm looking at Sacred Heart and I'm saying, where is their next loss going to happen? They play Merrimack, Mount St. Mary's, Canisius, I guess the Manhattan, maybe. I don't even know Manhattan's record this year. Nope, definitely not.
Siena is the big one for them. They've got Siena on April 11th. Right now, Siena would be like a 6-10 favorite in that game. But Hofstra is the next game where they have less than an 85% win probability. So they close their closing stretch is a little tougher, right? I mean, they skip ignoring Iona. They end with Siena and Marist, and
yeah,
so those are their 2 toughest games left. But yeah, I mean, would an undefeated Sacred Heart team host the first round game?
Yeah. How do you? I don't know. What's the?
I like the confidence.
What's the? Yeah. Look, whenever I get into like kind of the mid-major programs, I lose footing on like my knowledge of kind of just the conferences and all that stuff. So I don't want to speak too much on it, but I do want to give a shout out to a 5-0 undefeated Sacred Heart team. So again, there's your shout out, guys. All right, last piece. We got the strength of record up on the screen. The only team I believe we didn't touch on that is on this list is Denver. We'll continue to watch it. That is a little bit of a dark horse, the way they play defense, the way their goalie's playing. I don't know where they're at on the matrix for their face-off unit, but that could be a dark horse.
22nd right now from a face-off perspective.
It's not bad. So we've got that. All right, any last pieces here before we move on?
I mean, hey,
there you go.
Keep an eye on those out-of-conference games. Bracketology next week, even bigger and better.
Let's go. Hey, yeah, keep an eye out for Loyola, you folks out there. They've got a chance. It's a small chance.
1.6.
All right, I'm going to jump back into the media poll really quick, and then we're going to kind of finish out the rest of the episode. We've got about 2 minutes, I think, 2 or 3 minutes. Appreciate y'all joining us, by the way, on this Week 5 episode, Week 5 recap of College Lacrosse Live. Let's go. We've got Hopkins. Oh God, we're jumping back. We're not going to touch on Maryland. We've said Maryland too much.
I got the graphic for Hopkins.
Okay.
The win probability graphic. This is a fun one.
Oh, hold on. Let me throw this up correctly here.
That's the win probability graphic of the week. For sure. I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, they were not at 100%, but they were pretty close at that point. And then, and the craziest thing about this is like, they were, before Virginia scored that like garbage time goal, like they went from almost certainly losing to almost certainly winning the game in like 5 minutes. Like it's one thing to go from 100 to 0, but like, I don't think I've ever seen one of these charts where like the slope of the line was that steep.
And unfortunately, this is just more to pile on to the narrative that's building in Virginia and Charlottesville. They're right down the road from me, Zach, and they've had some strong seasons. I've had people comment and text me like, "Hey, is Large job safe?" With what's happening, and I'm like, he just won back-to-back national championships within like the last 5 to 6 years. Like, I don't think you can pull the plug on that. But I mean, this was just another dagger for a program that has kind of lost its way.
Cullison, far side, dishing off to Rawson. English, dodging on the short pole of Burtz. One more passage, Chavez, another goal. Ties his career high 6th goal, and Hopkins leads for the first time today with 2:37 to go in regulation.
I keep cutting you off like crazy today, but I had to show that highlight. And what were you saying before the highlight?
I was just gonna say, like they were better from an efficiency perspective than Hopkins in that game. Hopkins had like 7 extra possessions from the faceoff game. I mean, Virginia, like, I guess in terms of like panic mode, they've got High Point and Towson coming up. If they handle those games, then you're looking at a team that's like lost a game to Hopkins, lost to Richmond. Neither of those two is like really dire. If they lose to High Point or Towson, that's a different story. But
if they lose the High Point, Zach, things are gonna get weird. If they lose the High Point.
I think that's right. But they get to Maryland. I mean, they got Maryland on the 14th, and like that's definitely a loser leaves town type game from an NCAA tournament perspective, you would think.
Which one?
The Maryland versus UVA on the 14th.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a really good point. I love that take. Maryland versus UVA. It's like I don't even want to say what I was going to call it, but toilet bowl action is kind of close.
But it's just crazy to think that March 14th, one of those two teams is probably going to be out of postseason contention.
Black Doom saying Richmond getting the Maryland game postponed and the momentum they built in the past 5 games will make Georgetown and Notre Dame a fun one to watch. John Hopkins played a gritty and electric game against UVA. I caught the highlights on this one. I mean, if you look at it, a 14-13 game, other than the fact that you see the graphic here. Like, this is insanity to lose a game like this. 30% from your goalkeeper.
Yeah.
For UVA. I mean, you look at this as a specialist position like that when there's a 1-goal game. I know that it doesn't come down to that one guy, but when the difference is 60% for Hopkins, 30% for your keeper, didn't help. Ryan Colsey had 5 to lead McKay Millen with 5 as well, and then Chavez had 6 goals, no assists, so 6 points for Chavez. Ayers and English with 5 points apiece. So the defense sold separately a little bit in this game.
Yeah, it was. I mean, if you're UVA and you want to find that silver lining, like they were better on defense against Hopkins than they were against Richmond. But obviously that's not a lot of solace at this point.
I think, if you want to think about like a team, and we're going to get out of here soon. I know we're a little bit over time. If you want to see a team that's maybe a little bit of a dark horse, is Hopkins at number 11. I mean, they were down and out a few seasons here where they were just an afterthought, and now they're number 11 and no one's really talking about them. It's an interesting case.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. They have a tight game against Towson. They get kind of worked over by UNC. I mean, I think it's fair to say they got to prove it, and they have a chance with Syracuse coming up next. But you barely squeak by a Virginia after a game where North Carolina beats you by 8 goals. Like,
Yeah. No, it's fair. It's a great point by you. All right, we're going to wrap up here, folks. The last ones, that are on this list: Georgetown, Penn State, Rutgers was mentioned by you, Zach. We've got Denver, Virginia still in the top 20 at 2-2. Penn, UMass, St. Joe's. Any last takes here before we get out of those ones in kind of that bottom half of the top 20?
Yeah, I mean, St. Joe's is still one. UMass as well. Like they're teams that, if the A10 really continues to be strong, I mean, they've got a shot to be there in the conversation. Come Selection Sunday. So don't probably. I mean, at this point, you'd say more so than a team like UVA does. So we'll see.
All right, I know, and it just hit me, Zach, that we're not going to be able to get to the Efficient Frontier, but can you give a shout out to like the top player from the Efficient Frontier? I don't want to hold you too much longer.
No worries. I mean, there was actually a lot this week. I mean, Duffy showed up twice in terms of best games. Weishar and Villagomez for Towson were both on there.
Give me a quick rundown of what the Efficient Frontier is again.
So basically, we're looking for players that were the best combination of productive in terms of overall good value created, as well as efficient, right? So it's trying to find that mix of guys that did a lot with the touches they were given and also just did a lot in general. So trying to avoid the players that, 10 points on 30 shots, and then also saying, look, you can be on this list if you didn't have the most statistically wild game, but if it was against a really good defense, which is, how Duffy kind of shows up there with the game that's only in the 64th percentile for efficiency against Princeton. But when you account for the fact that that's a really good defense, we got to give credit there as well. So, you got to be good. You got to be good against a good team, and you got to be efficient.
Yeah, so Ayers showing up on this list against UVA. You mentioned Owen Duffy showing up twice here in both of their games. Sheridan, Luke Miller, Mikey, White Lightning, Weishar.
I mean,
here we go.
LIU they've kind of turned things around a little bit, and you see McKissick up there against Bellarmine. Like that's a team that, like, Kings of Long Island, maybe you'd say through this part of the season.
Shout out to Kyle Hayes, offensive coordinator with LIU. They're doing a good job up there, and he's a friend of the channel, so appreciate you. Guys, I appreciate all of you tuning in to College Lacrosse Live. A big shout out to Zack Capozzi, who joins us here every Monday morning to kind of recap all of these games for y'all. And he does a great job. So very, very big shout out here. Sign up to his Expected Goals Daily. It's already in the description there. laxreference.com for you guys. Just to keep up with the data side of the sport, the analytical side. Any last words, Zach?
No D3 grid again. We're losing our credibility. We got to do something next week.
I gave them the Salisbury highlight or low light, I should say, to start the episode. But you're right, no D3 grit. We'll work on it.
You're right. We did. We did do something.
Man, go Loyola this weekend. We'll see how they do. But you guys were awesome. We'll see you on Saturday morning. Hopefully we can get you. I may be at the championship series. So again, just for this past weekend and this upcoming, just be on the lookout for any updates from us for College Lacrosse Live on Saturday here. But just want to let you all know. Enjoy the week. I appreciate you guys. Later.
Take care.